Okay, this lesson covers some material from Unit 3.4 Box C. Specifically, we're looking at the distributive law. What we want to be able to do at the end of this lesson is we will want to be able to expand expression involving brackets using this distributive law. So what is this distributive law? Well, when we see something that looks like this, we've got a term out in front, this term A, and then we've got brackets, and then we've got two things inside the brackets that are added together or subtracted from each other. Okay? We know that when we see a term and then another term with no sign in between them, that the operation we're doing between these two things is multiplication. So this means A times B plus C. Okay? And the way that we can do this multiplication is we take this thing that is out in front of the brackets, the A, and we multiply it by each of these things that is inside the brackets. So we do A times B, and then we add it to A times C. So this means A times B plus A times C. Okay? And that is the distributive law. Okay? This is often called expanding because we have taken this and we sort of expanded it out. We've expanded it so that we have an A here and an A over here. Now, just to prove to you that this works, let's see how it works with numbers first. If I see 3 times 10 plus 2, I can take the 3, multiply it by the 10 to get 3 times 10, and then I add to it the 3 times the 2, 3 times 2. And then I can work out what this is. 3 times 10 is 30, plus 3 times 2 is 6, and our final answer would be 36. I could have also done it using BEDMAS. I could have done the operation inside the brackets first. So keep the 3 out front. This is 3 times, and then 10 plus 2 would be 12. And then 3 times 12 gives me 36. So notice our two answers here are the same, okay, which we are happy about because it shows us that this distributive property actually works. Now, most of the time, we aren't going to be using this in cases where we have numbers inside the brackets. What we're going to have inside our brackets are these terms that we've been working with coefficients and variables. So let's take a look at some examples where we apply this whole thing to where we have terms inside these brackets. So our first example here, we've got a 3 out in front. We're multiplying this by 2x plus 1. I'm going to expand this out. I'm going to do 3 times 2x. And to this, I'm going to add 3 times 1. I'm going to do my multiplication. So 3 times 2x. We remember how we multiply these things, right? Because we did this in the last unit. We just multiply the coefficients together. So we're going to get 6x here. And if we do 3 times 1, we just get, well, 3 times 1 is 3. Now, here's the question. Can I add that 6x and that 3 together? Because they are not like terms, so we can't add them together. All right, let's take a look at the next one here. I'm going to have got negative 2 times x minus 3. So I'm going to first do negative 2 times x plus negative 2 times negative 3. Just like when we were moving around those terms, when we were collecting like terms, I'm going to treat this sign in here like it goes with the term after it. So I'm going to see this x minus 3 as an x and a negative 3. And then I'm going to do my multiplication. Negative 2 times x is going to give me just, well, negative 2x. And then negative 2 times negative 3, let's see, negative times a negative gives me a positive. Multiply the numbers together, I get a positive 6. So negative 2x plus 6. Can I add these together? No, because they're not like terms. Okay. All right. So who wants to step us through this next one here? I got negative 5 times negative 3x plus 8y minus 4. What are we going to do here? Go for it. Do the steps for us. Do the steps.
Negative 5 times negative 3x plus negative 5 subtract negative 5.
Okay, I'm going to do a plus in there. Okay, so I'm always going to do addition between these things, and I'm going to keep the negative 5 in brackets and the negative 4 in brackets. Okay, so we've done negative 5 times negative 3x, negative 5 times 8y, negative 5 times negative 4. Okay. This step here that I've just written out isn't absolutely essential. Okay, when you get really good at this, you can skip that step and go right to the answer. I would put it in at the beginning, just to remind yourself what you're doing and to keep the sign straight. Okay, keep going. Good. Okay. And then I'm just going to clean this up a little bit here. If I've got a plus 40y, that's like, well, if I'm adding a negative, that's like subtracting. That plus sign and that negative sign combine to give me a negative sign. So I'm just going to write that as negative 40y plus 20. Okay. All right. And that's basically the distributive property. Okay. Now, a couple little tricks here. Here I got a fraction out in front. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to have 1/2 times 2y plus 1/2 times negative 6. How do I do 1/2 times 2y? Okay. Remember, we're just thinking about the coefficients here that we're multiplying. Okay? So we've got this 1/2, and we want to multiply it by the number that we see here, the 2. So how can we think of that 2? Right, we can think of it as 1/2 times 2 over 1 y, like that. Same thing over here. We can think of our negative 6 as negative 6 over 1. Okay, and then do our multiplication. So 1/2 times 2, we're going to get, multiply our numerators, we get 2 in the numerator, multiply our denominators, we get 2 in the denominators, gives us 2 over 2y, whoops, and that's not an equal sign. We should get a negative 6 over 2. How can we simplify this a little bit? Nicole.
2, 1, just y.
Yeah. 2 over 2 is 1. Now, and if 1 is going to be our coefficient, we don't even write it, right? So this is just going to be y. And what about our second term here? Negative 6 divided by 2. Negative 6 divided by 2. Is it going to be positive or negative? What do you think, Emily? Positive or negative? Negative. And then 6 divided by 2? Absolutely. So y minus 3. Okay. All right. Last example here. Okay. We've got negative 4y minus 4. Now, we don't see any number out in front. We just see this negative sign that's all by itself here. If we don't see a number, what number do we assume is there? Right. So in this case, we assume that this is actually negative 1 times 4y minus 4. Now we can do our expanding here. We'll have negative 1 times 4y plus negative 1 times negative 4. Okay, what's our answer going to be here? What do you think, Liam? Negative 1 times 4 gives us, is it positive or negative? Okay, and then we multiply the numbers, negative 4, and we're going to have that y. And then our next term is going to be, is it going to be positive or negative? Right? And positive 4. Positive because we got a negative times a negative. 1 times 4 gives us 4. And we are done with the distributive law.